The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the blue planet below. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, each one wearing the colors and symbols of their home worlds. The air recyclers hummed quietly, mixing atmosphere suitable for all the different kinds of life forms gathered here today. Some breathed oxygen like humans did, others needed methane or nitrogen. The station made sure everyone could survive. Ambassador Richard Hayes sat in the human section, his dark suit simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the other delegates. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Coalition for 5 years now. In that time he had learned patience. He had learned to listen more than he spoke. And he had learned that most species in the galaxy thought humans were young and foolish. Today would not change their minds. Not yet. The HFY magistrate stood at the center podium, her insect-like body clicking and buzzing as she spoke. The translator device on the wall turned her sounds into words everyone could understand. The Krathun swarm has destroyed another system. The Pelvor colonies are gone. 3 billion lives lost. 12 systems have fallen in 6 months. If we do not stop them here at Valoria, they will continue until nothing remains. Silence filled the chamber. Everyone knew what the Krathun were. They were a species that did not negotiate, did not trade, did not communicate. They only consumed. Their ships were alive, grown in dark places, fed on organic matter and starlight. They moved like locusts across the stars, taking everything and leaving empty worlds behind. We must each contribute to the defense, the magistrate continued. Every species must send their fleets to Valoria Prime. The Krathun will arrive in 1 week. We must be ready. One by one the species made their pledges. The Vex commander, a 7-foot-tall reptilian creature named General Krell, stood with his clawed hand over his chest. The Vex Empire will send 300 warships. We will hold the line. The Lumini Elder, a being of pure crystalline energy, shimmered as she spoke. Our people will contribute 200 vessels. We are a peaceful race, but we will fight to protect the innocent. The pledges continued. The Thorans promised 400 ships. The Nexari would send 250. Even the small trader species, the Plix, offered their 30 armed cargo haulers. The numbers grew and grew. By the time 30 species had spoken, over 5,000 ships had been promised. Then it was humanity's turn. Richard Hayes stood slowly. He walked to the podium with steady steps. He could feel all the eyes in the chamber on him. Some were curious. Some were expecting. Some were already dismissive. Humans had only joined the coalition 8 years ago. They were the newest members, the youngest spacefaring species, the ones who still used primitive chemical rockets alongside their newer quantum drives. Hayes reached the podium and looked out at the gathered delegates. He cleared his throat. Humanity will send 1 ship. The chamber erupted. General Krell was the first to speak, his voice a deep growl that cut through the noise. 1 ship? Did the translator malfunction? Surely you mean 100 ships. Hayes shook his head. No, General, 1 ship. The UNS Valiant will arrive in 3 days. The Zephyr magistrate leaned forward. Ambassador Hayes, perhaps you do not understand the scope of this threat. The Krathun will bring thousands of vessels. Thousands, how can 1 human ship make any difference? The Valiant will be enough, Hayes said simply. Laughter began in some sections of the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind that comes from disbelief. The Plix delegate, a small furry creature, spoke up in a squeaking voice. We are sending 30 ships and we are a minor species. Humanity has a larger fleet than ours. Why only 1? Hayes remained calm. His face showed no emotion. Because 1 is what we choose to send. The Valiant will fulfill humanity's obligations to this coalition. General Krell stood again, his tail lashing behind him in agitation. This is an insult. My species is sending 300 ships to die defending the system. The Thorans send 400, and humanity, with all your pride and your talk about honor, sends 1 ship. Are you cowards? Do humans run when real danger comes? The chamber went quiet. That was a serious accusation. In the coalition, to call another species cowards was to invite conflict. But Hayes did not rise to the anger. He simply looked at Krell with those tired eyes. The Valiant will arrive in 3 days, Hayes repeated. She will take her position with the fleet. When the battle comes, you will see what she can do. Until then, I have nothing more to say. He turned and walked back to his seat. Behind him, the chamber exploded with conversation again. Species were talking to each other, making gestures of confusion and anger. Some were laughing. Some were shaking their heads. The consensus was clear. Humanity had failed its first real test. The Luminae elder's voice cut through the noise, calm and measured. Perhaps we should trust Ambassador Hayes. Humanity has surprised us before with their creative solutions. But General Krell was having none of it. Creative solutions? There is no creative solution to an invasion fleet of 2,000 bioships. You need firepower. You need numbers. You need warriors willing to die. The humans are sending one ship because they are afraid to risk more. They want the coalition to protect them while they hide behind our strength. Hayes sat in his seat and said nothing. He had expected this reaction. Earth's military command had expected it too. That was part of the plan. Let them think what they wanted. Let them doubt. In 3 days, doubt would turn to something else entirely. The Ziffer magistrate called for order. Regardless of our feelings, we must accept what each species can contribute. Humanity will send one ship. We will place it with the fleet and hope it can be of some use. Now let us discuss defensive formations and supply lines. The meeting continued for hours. Battle plans were drawn up. Supply routes were established. Communication protocols were set. Through it all, Hayes sat quietly, occasionally answering questions about Earth ship specifications but offering no details about the Valiant itself. When other delegates asked what class of vessel it was, he simply said it was unique. When they asked about its weapon systems, he said they would see soon enough. By the time the council adjourned, the mood was grim. The coalition would make its stand at Valoria with over 5,000 ships, and one human vessel that nobody believed would matter. As Hayes left the chamber, General Krell blocked his path. The reptilian commander looked down at the human, his yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. I hope for your sake, Ambassador, that this ship of yours is more than you are telling us. Because if humanity fails to contribute meaningfully to this battle, your species will be remembered as the ones who stood aside while others died. Hayes met his gaze without flinching. The Valiant will contribute, General. You have my word. Krell snorted and walked away, his claws clicking on the metal floor. Hayes continued to his shuttle alone. He had one message to send to Earth before the Valiant arrived. Just 3 words that Earth's military command would understand. 3 words that meant the plan was proceeding exactly as expected. They are ready. The darkness of space near Valoria Prime was no longer empty. Over 5,000 ships filled the area around the blue and green planet, forming defensive rings that stretched for millions of kilometers. The Vex warships held the outer positions, their angular hulls painted in war colors of red and black. The Ziffer fleet formed a second line, their vessels built from organic metals that shimmered in the light of the system's star. Behind them came the Thorans, the Nexari, the Luminae, and dozens of other species, all arranged according to the battle plan. On the bridge of the Coalition flagship, General Krell watched his tactical display with intense focus. His claws tapped rhythmically on the armrest of his command chair, a nervous habit he had developed over 30 years of military service. Around him, officers from multiple species worked at their stations, monitoring sensors and coordinating the massive fleet. Report, Krell ordered. His communications officer, a young Vex named Tor, turned from his console. All ships report ready status, General. The outer sensor nets are active. If the Krathun enter the system, we will detect them immediately. And the human ship? Tor checked his readings. The UNS Valiant arrived 2 hours ago. She took position on the far edge of the formation, Sector 7. The captain has acknowledged all tactical protocols but has not joined the command network. Krell growled low in his throat. Typical humans. Even now they remain separate from the rest of the fleet. He pulled up the sensor data on the Valiant and studied it. The ship appeared to be perhaps 200 meters long, smaller than many of the Coalition cruisers. Its hull was smooth and unremarkable, with none of the weapon ports or armor plating that marked serious warships. It looked more like a transport than a fighter. One ship, Krell muttered to himself. They send us one ship that looks like it carries cargo. On board the UNS Valiant, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of his bridge, hands clasped behind his back as he watched the main view screen. The Coalition fleet stretched out before them, a beautiful and deadly array of shapes and lights. Each species built their ships differently, reflecting their cultures and needs, but all of them shared one thing in common. They were conventional warships, designed according to principles that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. The Valiant was not conventional. Status report, Morrison said calmly. His voice was steady and confident, the voice of a man who had commanded vessels for 20 years. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes sat at the tactical station, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. She was younger than Morrison by a decade, but she had earned her position through skill and intelligence. All systems are green, Captain. Reactor output is stable at minimal power. Deployment mechanisms are ready. The AI has finished analyzing the Coalition fleet positions and has calculated optimal firing solutions for every possible scenario. Fighter bays. All 600 drones are loaded and ready to launch. Fuel cells are charged. Weapon systems are armed. Morrison nodded. And the crew? Chief Engineer Ben Carter's voice came through the intercom from deep in the ship's engineering section. Crew is ready, Captain. Everyone knows their job. We have run the deployment sequence 40 times in simulation. We can do this. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. His crew was good. The best Earth had to offer. They had trained for 2 years on the Valiant, learning every system, every procedure, every emergency protocol. They knew this ship better than they knew their own homes. Now we wait, Morrison said. Mr. Porter, keep our sensors on maximum range. I want to know the moment the Krathen arrive. Lieutenant Sam Porter nodded from his position at the sensor station. He was a quiet man, focused and precise. His job was to watch, to analyze, to report. Aye, Captain. Long-range sensors are active. Nothing yet. The waiting began. Hours passed. The Coalition fleet held position, thousands of ships maintaining their formations with practiced discipline. Pilots sat in their cockpits ready to launch. Gunners stood by their weapons. Medical bays prepared for casualties. Everyone knew the Krathen were coming. It was just a question of when. On the flagship, General Krell tried to rest but could not. He kept returning to his command chair, checking reports, reviewing battle plans. The weight of command pressed on him. Millions of lives depended on this fleet. If they failed here, the Krathen would sweep through Coalition space unopposed. More worlds would die. His thoughts were interrupted by alarms blaring across the bridge. Contact, Tor shouted. Multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. General, they are coming in fast. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Krell leaped to his feet. All ships to battle stations. Activate shields and charge weapons. Sensor analysis, give me numbers. The sensor officer, a Lumine named Bright, spoke in her musical voice. Counting 2,147 distinct signatures, General. All match Krathen bioship profiles. They are accelerating toward us at 0.4 light speed. 2,000 ships, even more than intelligence had predicted. Krell felt his blood run cold, but he forced himself to remain calm. His fleet needed his strength now. All ships assume defensive formation Delta. Prepare to engage at maximum range. The Coalition fleet shifted, the ships moving with surprising grace for such large objects. The Vex warships formed the tip of a spear, ready to absorb the first impact. Behind them, other species prepared their weapons. On the Valiant's bridge, alarms sounded as well. Morrison watched the tactical display as thousands of red icons appeared on the screen, each one representing a Krathen bioship. They moved in swarm patterns, not following any formation that made sense to conventional military thinking. They simply came forward in a wave of organic death. They brought their whole fleet, Lisa said quietly. Morrison nodded. They want to make sure Valoria falls. Mr. Porter, are we recording all sensor data? Yes, sir. The AI is analyzing their movement patterns and biological signatures. We will know everything about them before we engage. Good. Hold position. We wait for them to commit to the attack. The Krathen swarm crossed half the distance to the Coalition fleet in minutes. Their bioships were ugly things, twisted masses of organic material that looked more like deep-sea creatures than spacecraft. They had no visible engines, no weapons ports, just pulsing flesh and bone that somehow moved faster than any conventional ship had a right to move. All ships, open fire at will, Krell commanded. The Coalition fleet lit up the darkness with weapons fire. Energy beams lanced across millions of kilometers. Missiles streaked forward, leaving trails of light. Kinetic rounds were fired from railguns, accelerated to incredible speeds. The first wave of attacks hit the Krathen ships, and some of them died, their organic hulls rupturing and spilling frozen fluids into space. But there were so many. For every Krathen ship destroyed, 10 more kept coming. They returned fire with their own weapons, biological projectiles that exploded on impact with the force of nuclear bombs. The outer line of Vex warships began taking casualties. Morrison watched one ship's icon disappear from his tactical display, then another, then 3 more. The Coalition is losing ships fast, Lisa reported. The Krathen regeneration is incredible. Ships that were damaged are healing themselves. Morrison watched the battle unfold, his face expressionless. This was what he had expected. Conventional weapons could kill Krathen ships, but not efficiently, not fast enough. The Coalition was brave and their tactics were sound, but they were fighting an enemy that broke all the rules. "Captain, the flagship is hailing us," Sam said. "General Krell is requesting immediate assistance. He says the outer line is collapsing." Morrison looked at the tactical display one more time. The Krathen had committed their entire force to the attack. There would be no second wave, no reserves. This was everything they had, which meant it was time. "All hands battle stations," Morrison announced, his voice calm but carrying to every section of the ship. "Prepare for deployment. Mr. Carter, bring the reactors to full power. Lisa, arm all weapon systems and prepare the fighter wings. We are going in." From engineering, Ben's voice came back excited and ready. "Reactors responding, Captain. Power output climbing to maximum. All systems are green. She is ready." Morrison sat in his command chair and gripped the armrests. "Helm, take us forward. Maximum combat speed. Lisa, begin deployment sequence on my mark." The Valiant moved forward, accelerating toward the battle. On the Coalition flagship, Krell noticed the human ship finally moving and felt a mix of hope and skepticism. One ship, no matter how brave its captain, could not turn this tide. Morrison watched the range indicators counting down. The Valiant crossed into the battle zone, weaving between Coalition ships that were fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. Krathen bioships turned their attention to the newcomer, sensing fresh prey. "Range to optimal deployment point in 10 seconds, Lisa announced. Morrison took a deep breath. "All crew brace for deployment." "This is what we trained for. Show them what humanity can do." The seconds counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. Begin deployment. The transformation began with a sound that traveled through the Valiant's hull like thunder. Deep inside the ship, massive locks released and hydraulic systems engaged. What every species in the Coalition had assumed was a simple human vessel revealed its true nature in a display that would be talked about for generations. The hull split open along seams that had been invisible moments before. Panels retracted smoothly into recessed compartments. Sections of the ship that had appeared solid began to unfold like the petals of a mechanical flower. The transformation was controlled chaos, each piece moving according to precise calculations made by the ship's central artificial intelligence. On the Coalition flagship, every officer stopped what they were doing and stared at their sensor displays in disbelief. The human ship was changing shape, growing larger with each passing second. Alerts filled the screens as the computers tried to make sense of what they were detecting. General Krell stood frozen, his clawed hand gripping the edge of his command console. "What is happening? What are they doing?" Bright, the Lumini sensor officer, spoke in a voice filled with wonder. "General, the ship is deploying." "It is not one vessel. It is a carrier. A compressed carrier on a scale I have never seen." The transformation continued. From the Valiant's expanding hull, fighter craft began to launch. Not 10 or 20 fighters, not even 100. 600 autonomous combat drones poured out of hidden bays, each one a sleek dart of metal and weapons. They moved with perfect coordination, their flight paths controlled by quantum-linked processors that allowed them to operate as a single unified intelligence. But the fighters were just the beginning. Gun batteries extended from recessed compartments all along the ship's growing surface. Hundreds of them, each one capable of independent targeting. Missile pods bloomed open like deadly flowers, revealing launch tubes that went deep into the ship's interior. Energy weapon arrays shimmered to life, their charging coils glowing with barely contained power. The true size of the Valiant became clear. The ship was massive, easily 3 times larger than the biggest Coalition dreadnought. It was not just a warship. It was a mobile weapons platform, a flying fortress that carried enough firepower to fight an entire fleet by itself. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Morrison watched the deployment status indicators turn green one by one. The process was going exactly as planned. All those simulations, all that training were paying off now. The ship was performing perfectly. Deployment complete, Lisa announced, her voice steady despite the excitement she must be feeling. All systems operational. Fighter wings are deployed and awaiting orders. Weapons are charged and locked. AI has acquired targets. We are ready to engage. Morrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he focused on the task at hand. Tactical analysis. Where do we do the most good? The main view screen shifted to show a battle map. The AI had been analyzing the fight since the moment the Krathen arrived, learning their patterns, identifying their weaknesses, calculating optimal strategies. Now it presented Morrison with 3 primary options, each one color-coded by effectiveness. The Krathun are focusing on the Coalition's outer defense line, Lisa said, reading the data. If that line breaks, they will sweep through the rest of the fleet. Recommendation is to support the Vex warships in sectors 3 through 7. That is where the pressure is greatest. Morrison nodded. Agreed. Fighter wings 1 and 2. Engage Krathun vessels attacking the Vex positions. Wings 3 and 4. Defensive screen for damaged Coalition ships. Wings 5 and 6 hunter-killer mode. Find their command vessels and prioritize them. The orders were transmitted instantly through the quantum link. The fighter drones responded immediately, breaking into their assigned groups and accelerating toward their targets. They moved faster than any piloted craft could, pulling maneuvers that would kill an organic being from the force of acceleration. All weapon batteries fire at will, Morrison continued. Target selection to AI control. Maximize efficiency. The Valiant opened fire. The effect was devastating. Missiles streaked away from the launch pods in streams of fire, each one guided by its own microprocessor toward a separate target. The AI had identified over 200 Krathen ships in optimal firing positions, and it sent ordnance toward all of them simultaneously. The missiles were not simple explosives. They were adaptive weapons, capable of adjusting their approach based on target behavior and deploying specialized warheads designed to disrupt biological systems. Energy beams followed milliseconds behind the missiles, lancing out from the weapon arrays in patterns of brilliant light. Each beam was carefully calibrated, focused on specific points on the Krathen bioships where the organic armor was weakest. The AI had analyzed thousands of sensor readings and identified the optimal targeting points for maximum damage. The kinetic batteries added their weight to the assault, firing depleted uranium rounds at speeds that turned them into relativistic projectiles. When they hit the Krathen ships, they punched through the organic hulls like they were paper, causing massive internal damage that even the bioship's incredible regeneration could not immediately heal. In the space of 30 seconds, the Valiant destroyed 47 Krathen vessels. The swarm reacted, turning away from the Coalition ships they had been attacking to focus on this new threat. Hundreds of bioships changed course, converging on the Valiant from multiple directions. They fired their biological weapons, launching massive projectiles that pulsed with organic energy. Incoming fire, Sam called out from his station. Multiple targets. Impact in 20 seconds. Morrison remained calm. Point defense systems, engage. The Valiant's hull bristled with smaller weapons designed specifically for this moment. Rapid-fire cannons tracked the incoming projectiles and opened up with streams of rounds that moved too fast for the human eye to follow. 90% of the Krathun weapons were destroyed before they got close. The remaining 10% hit the Valiant's shields, energy barriers that absorbed the impact and converted it into heat that was vented safely into space. Shields holding at 92%, Lisa reported. No damage to the hull. Morrison watched as the Krathun ships got closer, trying to overwhelm the Valiant with sheer numbers. It was a tactic that had worked for them against countless other species. But the Valiant was not like other ships. The AI managed defensive fire with inhuman precision, the point defense systems never stopping, never missing, never tiring. The fighter drones engaged the Krathen in three-dimensional combat that looked more like a dance than a battle. They moved in formations that shifted and flowed, always staying just ahead of the bioship's attempts to catch them. Their weapons fire was precise and coordinated, multiple drones focusing on single targets to burn through the organic armor and destroy vital systems. On the Coalition flagship, General Krell watched the battle unfold with growing amazement. His tactical officer was providing constant updates, and each one seemed more incredible than the last. The human ship has destroyed 112 enemy vessels, the officer reported. Their combat efficiency rating is 300% higher than our best units. General, I have never seen anything like this. Krell's communication panel lit up with incoming messages from other coalition ships. Every captain wanted to know what the human vessel was, what technology it used, how it was possible. Krell ignored them all. He was too focused on watching the valiant fight. The ship moved through the battle like a predator among prey. It was not fast compared to fighters, but it did not need to be. It simply positioned itself in optimal firing locations and poured out destruction. Any Krathun ship that got close enough to threaten it was destroyed by the fighter screen or the point defense systems. Any that tried to stay at range were picked off by the long-range weapons, and the Valiant was adapting. Krell could see it happening in real time. The human ship's firing patterns changed every few minutes, becoming more efficient as its AI learned from each exchange. It was identifying weaknesses in the Krathun ships, finding the best ways to kill them, and then sharing that information across all its weapon systems. Get me a communication channel to Captain Morrison, Krell ordered. He needed to speak to the human commander, needed to understand what he was seeing. Morrison's face appeared on the view screen, framed by the bridge of the Valiant. He looked calm, almost casual, despite the intense battle happening around his ship. General Krell, Morrison acknowledged. I hope our contribution is meeting with your approval. Krell almost laughed. It was such an understated way to describe what was happening. Captain Morrison, your ship is extraordinary. I have never seen anything like it. How is this possible? Morrison glanced at something off-screen, probably his tactical display. Humanity has certain advantages when it comes to engineering, General. We are not the strongest species. We do not have the most advanced energy weapons or the fastest engines, but we are very good at making systems that work together efficiently. The Valiant is the result of 15 years of development and the combined efforts of our best minds. One ship that fights like 1,000, Krell said quietly. Morrison nodded. That was the design goal. We knew we could not match the Coalition's ability to produce ships in large numbers. The battle had been raging for 3 hours, and the Krathun swarm was learning that brute force alone would not be enough. Their bioships had evolved over countless battles to adapt to enemy tactics, but they had never faced anything like the Valiant. Every strategy they attempted was countered before it could succeed. Every weakness they tried to exploit was already protected. Deep in the engineering section of the Valiant, Chief Engineer Ben Carter moved between control stations with practiced efficiency. Sweat covered his face despite the cool air pumped through the ship's ventilation system. Around him, his team of 30 engineers worked to keep the massive vessel operating at peak performance. Power distribution showing strain in sectors 12 through 17, one engineer called out. The missile systems are drawing more than projected. Ben pulled up the power grid on his portable display and studied it. Reroute auxiliary power from the secondary shield generators. We have enough coverage from the primary systems right now. Keep those missile pods firing. He moved to another station where a young engineer named Pete Harris was monitoring the reactor core. The heart of the Valiant was a fusion reactor more powerful than anything humanity had built before, capable of producing enough energy to power a small city. Right now it was running at 73% capacity, and the heat it generated was enormous. How are the cooling systems holding? Ben asked. Pete checked his readings. Temperature is high but within acceptable limits. The radiator panels are venting heat as fast as they can. If we push to 80% power, we will need to cycle down for cooling in about 4 hours. Ben opened a communication channel to the bridge. Captain, this is engineering. We are at 73% power capacity. Reactors are running hot but stable. We can maintain this output for another 6 hours before we need to cycle down. Morrison's voice came back immediately. Make it 8 hours, Ben. We need to break their command structure before they can retreat and regroup. Ben smiled despite the pressure. That was Morrison, always asking for just a bit more than seemed possible. But that was why they were here, why they had trained so hard. You will get your 8 hours, Captain. I will push the reactors to the edge, but we will keep her running. On the bridge, Morrison acknowledged the report and turned his attention back to the tactical situation. The battle had evolved into something more complex than a simple fight. It had become a chess match played at incredible speeds. with the Valiant's AI calculating moves and countermoves against the Krathun's biological intelligence. The swarm had tried to overwhelm the Valiant with numbers, sending waves of 300 ships in concentrated attacks. The ship's defensive systems had held, destroying the attackers with coordinated fire from dozens of weapon batteries. Then the Krathun had tried to outmaneuver the fighter drones, using their organic ship's ability to change direction without the limits of conventional engines. But the drones were controlled by quantum-linked processors that predicted movement before it happened, allowing them to stay ahead of every maneuver. Now the Krathun were trying something different. They were sacrificing their smaller ships to create debris fields, hoping to use the wreckage as cover, while their larger vessels moved into position for a devastating strike. It was a clever tactic, one that would work against most enemies. But the Valiant's sensors could see through debris, and its AI had already calculated what the Krathun were planning. "They are setting up an ambush," Lisa said, highlighting a section of the battle map. 60 of their largest bioships are hiding behind that debris field. They are waiting for us to advance so they can hit us from close range. Morrison studied the map. "What do you recommend?" Lisa smiled. It was the smile of someone who had just solved a difficult problem. "We let them think the ambush is working. Deploy electromagnetic pulse drones into the debris field. When the Krathun ships emerge, we hit them with the pulses. It will disrupt their biological neural networks and leave them vulnerable for at least 30 seconds. More than enough time to destroy them. Do it." The Valiant launched a new wave of specialized drones, small craft designed for a single purpose. They flew into the debris field at high speed, weaving between chunks of destroyed ships until they were in optimal positions. Then they waited, their systems powered down to minimal levels to avoid detection. The Valiant advanced, appearing to move into the Krathun trap. The fighter screen pulled back slightly as if the ship was vulnerable. On the Coalition flagship, General Krell watched with concern. "The human ship is exposing itself," his tactical officer warned. "Those Krathun vessels are preparing to strike." But Krell had learned to trust Morrison. "Hold position. Let us see what they do." The Krathun took the bait. Their 60 large bioships emerged from hiding, moving with surprising speed for vessels of their size. They opened fire with everything they had, biological weapons pulsing with deadly energy. It was enough firepower to destroy any conventional ship. The electromagnetic pulse drones activated. A wave of disruption spread through the area. Invisible to human eyes but devastating to the Krathun's biological systems. The bioship's neural networks, the living computers that controlled their movement and weapons, overloaded instantly. For 30 seconds they were dead in space, unable to move or defend themselves. 30 seconds was an eternity in combat. The Valiant's weapon systems targeted all 60 ships simultaneously. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic rounds converged on the helpless vessels. The destruction was total and efficient. Within 20 seconds, all 60 Krathun ships were gone, reduced to debris that joined the field they had been hiding in. The Coalition fleet cheered. On dozens of ships, crews watching the battle saw what the Valiant had done and felt hope surge through them. This enemy that had seemed invincible was being systematically destroyed by human tactics and technology. But Morrison was not celebrating. He was watching his tactical display, looking for the next move, the next threat, and he found it. "There," he said, pointing to a cluster of icons at the edge of the battle space. "Those 5 ships. They are bigger than the others and they are staying back from the fight. Sam, get me detailed sensor readings on them." Lieutenant Porter focused the Valiant's powerful sensors on the designated targets. Data began flowing across his screens and his eyes widened. "Captain, those ships are different from the others. Their biological signatures show much higher neural activity. They are putting out enormous amounts of electromagnetic signals. I think they are command vessels." Lisa checked her tactical database. That matches intelligence reports from other battles with the Krathun. They use a distributed command structure. Those 5 ships are the brain of the swarm. If we destroy them, the rest of the Krathun ships will lose coordination. Morrison made his decision instantly. All fighter wings converge on those command vessels. I want them destroyed. Lisa, prepare a firing solution with all long-range weapons. We take them out now. But even as the Valiant began to execute the attack, the Krathun command ships recognized the danger. They began to retreat, pulling back from the battle while the rest of the swarm moved to protect them. Hundreds of bioships formed a defensive sphere, creating a living shield between the command vessels and the human threat. They know we are targeting them, Lisa said. They are protecting the command ships with everything they have. Morrison studied the situation. A direct assault would cost them time and ammunition, and might allow the command ships to escape into hyperspace. They needed a different approach. He opened a communication channel to the Coalition flagship. General Krell, this is Captain Morrison. I need your help. On the flagship, Krell immediately responded. What do you need, Captain? The Krathen are trying to protect their command vessels. They have formed a defensive sphere that will take time to break through, but if your fleet can pressure them from the opposite side, create a distraction, my fighters can slip through the gaps and eliminate the command structure. Can you do it? Krell looked at his tactical display. What Morrison was asking would require his ships to move directly into the heart of the Krathen formation. It would be dangerous. Ships would be lost. But if it ended the battle and saved Valoria, it was worth the risk. We can do it, Captain. Give me 2 minutes to coordinate the assault. Krell switched to fleet-wide communications. All Coalition vessels, this is General Krell. We have an opportunity to end this battle, but it will require courage and sacrifice. We are going to assault the Krathen defensive formation and create an opening for the human fighters to reach the command ships. Some of us will not survive this attack, but our deaths will save Valoria and prove that the Coalition stands together against any threat. Are you with me? The responses came back from every ship. The Vex warships roared their battle cries. The Zephyr vessels sang their war songs. The Thorans, the Nexari, the Luminae, even the small Plix traders all confirmed they were ready. All ships form assault wedge formation, Krell ordered. Maximum acceleration. We hit them with everything we have. For the Coalition! The Coalition fleet surged forward as one, thousands of ships accelerating toward the Krathun defensive sphere. They fired as they came, weapons lighting up the darkness. The Krathen returned fire and ships began to die. The collapse of the Krathun command structure was like watching a living organism die. The bioships that had moved with such deadly coordination suddenly became confused and disoriented. Some continued to fight, following the last orders they had received. Others simply stopped moving, drifting in space as their biological systems shut down without the guiding intelligence to direct them. A few attempted to flee, their individual survival instincts overriding whatever group programming they had possessed. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Morrison watched the tactical display as the red icons representing enemy ships began to thin out. The battle was not over yet, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Coalition fleet, energized by the destruction of the command vessels, pressed their advantage. They hunted down the scattered Krathen ships with renewed determination. Tactical report, Morrison ordered. Lisa studied her console, her fingers moving quickly across the controls. Remaining Krathen forces are at 37% of original strength. Most of the survivors are attempting to retreat. The Coalition fleet is pursuing. Our fighter wings are engaging stragglers. Estimated time to complete mop-up operations is 45 minutes. Morrison nodded. Recall fighter wings 5 and 6. Have them form a defensive perimeter around the damaged Coalition vessels. Wings 1 through 4 can continue pursuit operations. Lisa, stand down half of our weapon batteries and begin power cycling. We need to let the systems cool. From engineering, Ben Carter's voice came through, sounding exhausted but triumphant. Captain, we are at 81% power capacity. The reactors performed beyond specifications. I have never been more proud of this ship or this crew. You did good work, Ben. All of you did. Take us down to 40% power. We have earned a rest. As the Valiant's systems began to power down from combat status, the ship started its retraction sequence. The deployed sections that had made it such an imposing weapons platform began to fold back into the hull. Gun batteries retracted into their hidden compartments. Missile pods closed and sealed. The fighter drones that were not actively engaged returned to their bays, guided by the AI into their docking cradles, where they would be refueled and rearmed. Within 15 minutes, the Valiant had compressed back to its original size. The transformation was just as impressive in reverse, a demonstration of engineering precision that left observers amazed. The hull that had been marked by weapon fire and energy impacts during the battle now showed its scars more clearly, but even damaged, the ship looked sleek and deadly. On Valoria Prime, The 3 billion inhabitants who had spent the day watching the battle unfold in their skies began to celebrate. The planet had been hours from invasion, hours from the same fate that had befallen 12 other worlds. Now they were saved. The Krathun swarm was broken. Cities erupted with joy. People poured into the streets crying and laughing and holding each other. In orbit above the planet, the coalition fleet began to regroup. Ships that had taken damage moved toward repair stations. Medical shuttles flew between vessels, collecting wounded for treatment. And everywhere, on every ship, crews were talking about what they had witnessed. The human vessel that had changed the course of the battle. The ship that had fought like an entire fleet. General Krell sat in his command chair, feeling older than his years. The battle had cost the coalition dearly. 73 ships destroyed, over 1,000 more damaged, tens of thousands of casualties. But they had won. Valoria was safe. And they had learned something important about their human allies. "Get me Ambassador Hayes," Krell ordered, "and prepare a shuttle. I need to speak with Captain Morrison in person." 2 hours later, Krell's shuttle docked with the Valiant. The human ship's docking bay was utilitarian and efficient. Nothing like the decorated spaces found on many coalition vessels. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was wasted on appearance. It suited what Krell now understood about humanity. Captain Morrison met him at the airlock, accompanied by Lisa Hayes. Morrison was younger than Krell had expected, perhaps 40 years, old by human standards, with dark hair showing some gray at the temples. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decorations. Lisa stood beside him, professional and alert. "General Krell," Morrison said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Valiant." Krell took the hand, careful not to grip too hard with his clawed fingers. "Captain Morrison, I came to thank you personally. Your ship saved this fleet. Your tactics won this battle. Without the Valiant, Valoria would have fallen." Morrison shook his head slightly. "We did not win this battle alone, General. Your fleet held the line when it mattered most. Your assault on the Krathun defensive sphere created the opening we needed. This was a coalition victory, not just a human one." They walked through the ship's corridors as they talked, Krell noting how every crew member they passed showed signs of exhaustion, but also pride. These humans had pushed themselves and their vessel to the limit, and they knew they had accomplished something remarkable. "I must ask," Krell said, "why did you only send one ship? With technology like this, humanity could have sent a dozen vessels and dominated any battle." Morrison stopped at a viewport that looked out at the debris field where the battle had been fought. "Because we only have one ship like this, General. The Valiant took 15 years to design and build. She represents the combined resources of 3 of our largest industrial stations and the work of thousands of our best engineers. We cannot mass-produce vessels like her. She is unique." "But the principles," Krell pressed, "the modular design, the AI integration, the adaptive weapon systems, could those be applied to other ships?" Morrison looked at the reptilian commander. "Yes, and that is why Ambassador Hayes is already discussing technology-sharing agreements with the Coalition Council. We cannot give you ships like the Valiant, but we can help you upgrade your existing fleets, teach you our methods, share our tactical doctrines. Humanity believes the Coalition is stronger when all its members contribute their unique strengths." They continued to a conference room where Ambassador Hayes was waiting, along with several other Coalition representatives who had shuttled over. The room was filled with holograms showing damage assessments and casualty reports. The cost of victory was laid out in stark numbers. Hayes stood when they entered. "General Krell, I am glad you could join us. We have much to discuss." Over the next hour, they talked about the battle, about the Krathun threat, about humanity's role in the Coalition. Krell learned that the Valiant was a prototype, a proof of concept for a new way of thinking about space warfare. Earth had other ships in development, smaller versions of the Valiant that would be easier to produce. Within 5 years, humanity planned to contribute a dozen vessels to the Coalition fleet. But more importantly, Hayes explained, humanity wanted to share its knowledge. The AI systems that made the Valiant so effective could be adapted for Coalition ships. The targeting solutions, The tactical programs, the coordination protocols, all of it could be integrated into existing vessels to make them more capable. "We are the newest members of the coalition," Hayes said. "We do not have the industrial capacity of the Vex or the advanced energy weapons of the Luminae, but we have our own strengths. We are good at solving problems in creative ways. We are good at taking existing technology and combining it in new configurations. We want to contribute those strengths to make the coalition stronger." The Luminae elder, who had joined the meeting via hologram, spoke with warmth in her crystalline voice. "Ambassador Hayes, on behalf of the coalition, I formally apologize for doubting humanity's commitment. You have proven your worth beyond question. The Council would be honored to enter into technology-sharing agreements with Earth." General Krell added his own words. "I personally insulted your people, Ambassador. I called your ship inadequate. I suggested humans were cowards. I was profoundly wrong. I ask for your forgiveness and offer my respect." Hayes smiled gently. "General, there is nothing to forgive. You had every reason to doubt. We made an extraordinary claim with no evidence to support it. But we knew the Valiant would speak louder than words. Actions matter more than promises. Today, the Valiant acted. And I hope we have shown that humanity stands with the Coalition, ready to defend innocent lives against any threat." The meeting continued for another hour, discussing practical matters, repair schedules, replacement of lost vessels, analysis of Krathun tactics for future battles. Throughout it all, there was a new tone of respect when anyone spoke to or about the human representatives. Eventually, Krell and the other Coalition delegates returned to their ships. Morrison walked Hayes back to his shuttle, and for a moment they stood alone in the docking bay. "You played your part perfectly," Morrison said quietly. "Letting them doubt, letting them mock us, it made the revelation more effective." Hayes nodded. "Sometimes the best diplomacy is showing rather than telling. But I will admit, sitting in that council chamber while they laughed at us was not easy." "Was it worth it?" Hayes looked through the bay's force field at the Coalition fleet assembling outside. Ships from dozens of species, all working together, all united in common purpose. "Yes, Captain, it was worth it. Today we did not just win a battle. We earned respect. We showed the galaxy that.